When Michael Jackson died in 2009, his estate discovered something locked in a private vault. A master tape labeled November 1995 MC and MJ Never Release. Music executives tried to acquire it. Collectors offered millions. Mariah Carey herself said it should stay buried. What's on that tape? A duet between two of history's greatest voices, recorded during Michael's darkest hour. But this wasn't a performance. This was therapy. This was two broken artists teaching each other how to breathe again. In England, November 3rd, 1995, 2:15 a.m., Abbey Road Studios, Studio 2. The same room where the Beatles had recorded their masterpieces. The same acoustic perfection that had captured some of the greatest voices in music history. Tonight, it was witnessing something different. Not creation, destruction. Michael Jackson sat on the floor of the vocal booth, his back against the soundproof wall, knees pulled to his chest like a child trying to disappear. His signature black fedora lay discarded beside him. His sequin jacket hung on a chair untouched. He'd been in this position for 3 hours. Not moving, not speaking, just staring at the microphone stand in front of him like it was an executioner waiting for his final words. David Richardson, the veteran sound engineer who'd worked with everyone from Elton John to Stevie Wonder, stood in the control room watching through the glass. He'd seen artists struggle before. He'd seen vocal fatigue, stage fright, creative blocks. But he'd never seen this. Never seen someone look at a microphone with such absolute terror. Michael, David's voice came through the talkback speaker, gentle but concerned. "We can take a break. Come back tomorrow. Try again when you're ready." Michael didn't move, didn't acknowledge the words, just kept staring at that microphone. The problem wasn't technical. Michael's vocal cords weren't damaged. He hadn't been sick. He hadn't been screaming at concerts or straining his voice. The problem was deeper than anatomy, more devastating than any physical injury. Michael Jackson, the man who had sung Billie Jean, Thriller, Man in the Mirror, the voice that had defined a generation, couldn't make a sound. Not because his body had failed him, because his soul had. But what David didn't know was that 3,000 miles away another voice was about to break too. And in 12 hours, two of the greatest singers in history would teach each other the one thing they'd both forgotten, that some performances aren't meant to be perfect. They're meant to be honest. Earth Song was supposed to be his comeback, his statement, his proof to the world that he was still the king of pop, despite everything the media had said, despite the 1993 allegations that had devastated him, despite the tabloids that had turned him into a monster in the public imagination. But when he opened his mouth to sing that first note, nothing came out. And when he tried again, forcing air through his vocal cords, what emerged wasn't music. It was a broken, cracked sound that made him stop immediately, tears filling his eyes. For 6 hours now, they'd been trying. David had adjusted every technical setting possible, changed microphones, adjusted the acoustics, brought in different instrumental tracks. Nothing worked. Because the problem wasn't in the equipment, it was in the man. Michael, David tried again, his voice more urgent now. "I need to make a call. There's someone who might be able to help. She's in London tonight, just for one show. If I can get her here." Michael finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "Who?" David hesitated. This was a risk, a huge risk, but they were out of options. "Mariah Carey. She's performing at Wembley tomorrow night. She's staying at the Dorchester. If I call her now." Michael's head jerked up. "No." His voice was sharp now, defensive. "No, I can't have anyone see me like this." David had known Michael for 8 years. He'd recorded Dangerous with him. He'd watched Michael work until dawn, perfecting every note, every breath, every sound. He'd seen the perfectionist, the genius, the artist who demanded excellence from himself more than anyone else ever could. But tonight, he was seeing something different. He was seeing a man who had broken under the weight of his own impossible standards. A man who couldn't let anyone witness his failure. "Michael," David said softly, walking to the vocal booth door, opening it slowly. "Right now, you're sitting on the floor of Abbey Road unable to sing. Tomorrow, you have to deliver Earth Song to Sony. You've got 12 hours to figure this out. And brother, I don't think you can do it alone. Not tonight." The words hung in the air like smoke. Heavy, undeniable, true. He'll put his face in his hands. Make the call. David was back in the control room immediately, dialing a number he'd acquired that afternoon from a mutual friend in the industry. The phone rang 4 times. He was about to hang up when a sleepy voice answered. Hello? Mariah, this is David Richardson. We met at the Grammys in '93. I'm a sound engineer. I'm calling because… He paused, choosing his words carefully. I'm calling because Michael Jackson needs help, and I think you're the only person who can give it to him. There was silence on the other end. Then, what kind of help? His voice is gone, not damaged. Gone, like it never existed. He's supposed to record Earth Song, and he can't make a sound. I've seen artists struggle, but this is different. This is someone who's forgotten why they ever loved music in the first place. Another long silence. Then Mariah's voice came back, clearer now, awake. Where are you? Abbey Road, Studio 2. I'll be there in 40 minutes, Mariah, David added quickly, before she could hang up. He doesn't want anyone to see him like this. So when you get here, don't come in like you're rescuing him. Come in like you're just stopping by. Like it's no big deal. Mariah understood immediately. I'll bring coffee. Like I was just in the neighborhood. She arrived at 3 a.m. exactly. Mariah Carey, one of the biggest stars on the planet, wearing jeans and a simple black sweater, her famous hair pulled back in a ponytail, carrying 2 cups of coffee from an all-night cafe she'd found on the way. David met her at the studio entrance. Thank you for coming. Mariah handed him 1 coffee. Where is he? David pointed through the control room glass to the vocal booth. Michael was still on the floor, but now his head was resting against the wall, eyes closed, looking like he might be asleep or might be trying to disappear into the soundproofing. Mariah studied him for a long moment. Then she did something that surprised David. She smiled, not a happy smile, a knowing smile, the smile of someone who recognized something they'd seen in their own mirror. I know exactly what's wrong with him, Mariah said quietly. What? He's terrified of his own voice. He's forgotten that it belongs to him. He thinks it belongs to everyone else. To Sony, to the fans, to the people who expect perfection. And when you think your voice isn't yours anymore, it stops working. How do you know that? Mariah looked at David with eyes that had seen the same darkness. Because that's what happened to me in '94, right after my divorce from Tommy. I stood in a recording booth for 6 hours and couldn't sing a note. Not because I couldn't. Because I'd forgotten who I was singing for. What did you do? Mariah picked up the 2nd coffee cup. I learned to sing for myself again. And tonight, that's what I'm going to teach him. She walked into Studio 2 without hesitation, moving with the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. Michael's eyes opened when he heard the door. He looked up, saw Mariah, and his expression shifted through several emotions in rapid succession. Surprise, embarrassment, shame, then resignation. Mariah sat down on the floor next to him, not saying a word, and handed him the coffee. They sat in silence for almost 5 minutes. Just 2 people on the floor of a recording studio at 3 in the morning, drinking coffee, not speaking. David watched from the control room, resisting the urge to turn on the talkback, letting whatever was happening happen. What neither of them knew was that the silence was about to break something inside both of them, something that had been building for years, something that would create a recording worth more than any song either of them had ever released. But first, they had to remember how to sing badly. Finally, Michael spoke. You don't have to be here. Mariah took a sip of her coffee. I know. David called you. He did. You came anyway. Mariah turned to look at him directly. Michael, do you know what I was doing 2 nights ago? Michael shook his head. I was standing in my hotel bathroom practicing whistle notes for 3 hours because I was convinced I'd lost them. I hadn't. But I was so terrified of failing that I couldn't hear them anymore. I was listening to everyone else's expectations instead of my own voice. Michael's eyes met hers. What changed? Mariah paused, choosing her next words carefully, because what she was about to say would either save him or break him completely. I stopped trying to be perfect. I started trying to be honest. And Michael, what I'm about to ask you to do is going to sound insane. She stood up, offering him her hand. Come on, get up. We're going to do something that every vocal coach in the world would say is crazy. Michael took her hand and stood slowly, his body stiff from sitting on the floor for hours. What are we doing? We're going to sing the worst song you can possibly sing. On purpose. We're going to make it sound terrible. We're going to break every rule. And we're going to remember why making mistakes is part of making music. Michael looked at her like she'd lost her mind. Mariah, I can't even sing well right now. You want me to sing badly? I want you to sing freely. There's a difference. Mariah walked to the microphone, adjusted it to her height, and without any warm-up, any preparation, any technical setup, she started singing Happy Birthday, but not well. She sang it off-key, with terrible timing, with exaggerated vibrato that sounded ridiculous. She sang it like a child in a school play who'd forgotten the words and was making them up. David's jaw dropped in the control room. Mariah Carey, owner of one of the most technically perfect voices in music history, was deliberately singing badly, and she was smiling while doing it. When she finished, she turned to Michael. Your turn. Sing anything. Sing it wrong. I dare you. Michael stared at her. Then, slowly, something shifted in his expression. The corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. He stepped up to his microphone, cleared his throat, and started singing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star in the most exaggerated, overdramatic operatic style imaginable. His voice cracked on purpose. He missed notes intentionally. He added ridiculous runs that made no musical sense. And for the first time in 6 hours, sound came out. Real sound. Not perfect. Not polished. But real. Mariah started laughing. That was horrible. Michael laughed too. It was. Wasn't it? Terrible. Do it again. Make it worse. So he did. And she joined him. Two of the greatest voices in the world singing a children's song they were deliberately trying to fail. David watched from the control room, shaking his head in disbelief. But he was smiling. Because something was happening. Something was breaking. Something was healing. They spent the next hour singing badly. Every children's song they could remember. Every commercial jingle. Every terrible song they'd secretly loved as kids, but were too embarrassed to admit. They sang off-key. They sang out of rhythm. They sang with accents and impressions and voices that would have made vocal coaches weep. And somewhere in that hour, Michael's voice came back. Not the polished, perfect, king of pop voice. Something raw, something more real, something that belonged to him again instead of everyone else's expectations. At 4:30 a.m. Mariah finally said, "Okay, now we're ready. Now we can sing something that matters." She signaled to David in the control room. "Do you have the track for Earth Song?" David nodded, pulling up the instrumental on the console. Mariah turned to Michael. "This time, don't sing it for Sony. Don't sing it for the fans. Don't sing it for the charts. Sing it for yourself. Sing it because it matters to you. Sing it because if you don't, you'll regret it forever." Michael looked at her, and in his eyes was something that hadn't been there 3 hours ago. Hope. What if I can't? Then we'll sit back down on the floor and drink more coffee. But, Michael, I don't think that's going to happen. Because your voice isn't gone. It was just waiting for you to remember why you started singing in the first place. The instrumental track began. Those haunting opening chords of Earth Song filled the studio. Michael closed his eyes, took a breath, and sang. What came out wasn't perfect. His voice cracked slightly on the first note, but he didn't stop. He pushed through, and by the time he reached the chorus, the voice that emerged was devastating in its honesty. This wasn't a performance. This was confession. This was a man singing about a planet dying, about humanity failing, about hope surviving against impossible odds. And it was real. When he finished, there were tears streaming down his face. But he was smiling. Mariah was crying too. That's it. That's the one. That's what the world needs to hear. But instead of stopping, instead of celebrating, Michael did something unexpected. Something that would change everything. He looked at Mariah and said, "Now there's something you need to sing. Something you've been afraid to record." Mariah's smile faded. "How did you know?" "Because I can see it in your eyes. The same thing that was in mine an hour ago. You've got a song you're terrified of. Because it's too honest, too raw, too real. And you think if you sing it, people will see too much of who you really are. Mariah was silent for a long moment. Then she whispered, "One sweet day." Michael nodded. "Sing it. For you, not for anyone else." Mariah hesitated. Then she stepped to the microphone. David queued up the instrumental track that she'd brought with her, always carried with her, never had the courage to record, and Mariah Carey sang "One Sweet Day" like she'd never sung before. Not with technical perfection, not with show-stopping runs, but with every ounce of pain she'd been carrying since losing people she loved, since feeling like she was dying under the weight of other people's expectations, since wondering if fame was worth the cost. When she finished, Michael said quietly, "That's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard you sing." Mariah wiped her eyes. "It's not perfect. That's why it's beautiful." They looked at each other. Two artists who'd spent years trying to be perfect had just discovered something more important. They discovered permission to be human. Michael turned to David in the control room. "Are you recording all of this?" David nodded. "Everything." From the moment Mariah walked in, Michael looked at Mariah. "What if we kept going? What if we made something together? Not for Sony, not for release, just for us. Something we can look back on and remember this night. Remember what it felt like to sing honestly again." Mariah smiled. "What do you want to sing?" Michael thought for a moment. "Something about breaking, about rebuilding, about two people who forgot how to breathe under pressure and had to teach each other how to survive." They spent the next 44 hours in that studio. David brought in food. They slept on the studio couches for a few hours. Then they'd wake up and go back to the microphones, creating something that no one had asked for, that no label was expecting, that no fans would ever demand. They called it One More Chance. It wasn't about love. It wasn't about heartbreak. It was about two artists at the peak of their careers, who'd almost been destroyed by perfection, teaching each other that it was okay to be broken. That being broken was how the light got in. The song they created was devastating. Michael's voice and Mariah's voice intertwining, harmonizing, sometimes clashing intentionally, sometimes supporting each other through the difficult notes. It was jazz and soul and gospel and pop, and none of those things. It was honest. But as the final notes faded, neither of them realized they'd just created something that would haunt music historians for decades. A recording that would be offered millions. A tape that Mariah herself would one day demand stay buried. The question wasn't whether it was brilliant. It was whether the world deserved to hear it. When they finally finished at 2 a.m. on November 5th, they stood in front of the microphones, exhausted, emotionally drained, but somehow more whole than they'd been when they started. Mariah turned to Michael. "What happens to this recording?" Michael looked at the control room window where David was making a master copy. "This one's not for the world. This one's for us. For when we forget again. For when we need to remember that it's okay to break. That we can always rebuild." Mariah nodded. "So we never release it. We never release it." They left Abbey Road Studios at 3 a.m. on November 5th. Michael returned to finish Earth Song the next day. His voice was there, raw but present, real but powerful. The song became one of his most acclaimed works. Mariah went on to record One Sweet Day with Boyz II Men. It became the longest-running #1 song in Billboard history at that time. 16 weeks at the top, but the recording they made together stayed locked away. Michael labeled it November 1995 MC and MJ Never Release, and placed it in his private vault at Neverland Ranch. When Michael died in 2009, his estate found the tape. Music executives wanted to release it. Collectors offered millions for it, but Mariah Carey made a single phone call to the estate and said 3 words: "Keep it buried." Not because it wasn't good, not because it wasn't valuable, but because some songs aren't meant for audiences. Some performances aren't meant to make money. Some recordings exist solely to save the people who made them. That 48 hours in Abbey Road Studios saved 2 of the greatest voices in music history. It taught them that perfection was a cage and honesty was freedom. It reminded them why they'd started singing in the first place. The world got Earth Song. The world got One Sweet Day. Those songs changed millions of lives, but the song that changed Michael and Mariah's lives will never be heard. Because sometimes the most important performances happen when nobody's listening. Sometimes the most powerful songs are the ones we sing to save ourselves, David Richardson still has the only other copy of that recording. He's been offered millions for it. He's been threatened with lawsuits to release it. He's been begged by music historians to at least confirm what's on the tape. He's never said a word, because he made a promise to artists who taught him something that night. That some music isn't meant to entertain. It's meant to heal. And when music becomes medicine, you don't sell it. You protect it. That master tape sits in a vault today. Two voices that changed the world, captured in their most vulnerable moment. Singing not for fame or fortune or legacy. Singing for survival. Singing for each other. Singing for the chance to remember that underneath all the pressure, all the expectations, all the demands of being great, they were still human. And being human was enough. One more chance. That's what they gave each other. One more chance to find their voices. One more chance to remember why music mattered. One more chance to be broken and beautiful at the same time. Some songs change the world, but some songs change the singers. And those are the ones that stay locked away. Not because they're not valuable, but because they're priceless.